HARK! It's that time, officially the beginning of preview season, because holy crap, we have a lot of stuff to go over. We've got a Gamegenic stream to go over. We've got a couple of previews from the FFG deck construction stream that happened. That one's not as relevant, mainly just the preview specifically. We've got 3 leaders this week. I think they're boosting the leader preview schedule pretty fast, pretty hard, because they want to get everything finished before the halfway mark or even 3/4 mark for February. And we have a ton of previews from a bunch of different creators all across the YouTube landscape and other locations as well, websites. Lots of cool things to go through here. So we're going to get started with this leader and then move on to everything else that comes thereon after. Starting us off, we have a leader that I think a lot of people expected to be in this set, but what this specific leader does, I don't think anybody expected. We have Admiral Ackbar. It's a trap! A cunning heroism rebel official leader. Action 1 resource and exhaust the leader. Exhaust a non-leader unit. If you do, its control creates an X-Wing. Flips on 6 into a 3/8. This is a common, number 16 out of 262 in JTL. And the effect on the leader side is on attack, you may exhaust a unit. If you do, its controller creates an X-Wing token. So not a pilot, it is more of a commander type leader, as Admiral Ackbar wouldn't technically be piloting Home 1, but adding his skills and leadership value to that ship that's out there. So basically, you can think of him in Home 1, giving out orders and stuff like that to be able to do the things that he does with his leader ability, both the front side and the unit side. I'm gonna be real. This is a meme leader. This is a leader that is not in contention for any specific strategy that's going to be viable in competitive Premier, which is realistically the only format that matters, because even though competitive Premier is only played in showdowns and PQs, the effectiveness of decks in those formats trickle down to other formats, including Premier in your casual local markets. I know my markets are all flooded with meta decks, except for a couple places that do best of ones, where they want to have a little bit more fun, which is absolutely fantastic. This could be an interesting Twin Suns leader, because it does provide an option for you to help somebody else while also hindering them. But I don't really go through the Twin Suns design of the game unless it's something that's very specifically created for that purpose, like the rare bases were for the last cycle in Twilight of the Republic. Admiral Ackbar, unfortunately, just is not up to snuff for our game, for Premier, for the competitive aspect, which is what most people generally play in the game. And while he's a fun, funky leader with a cool subtitle, subtext for what he does, exhausting a unit and giving that unit's controller an X-Wing either provides your opponent with tools to be able to beat you with, or reduces your ability to win the game on any given turn by providing only a token. And I know that's basically saying that it's good for the opponent and bad for you whether you do it. So why is it 2 different standards? It's more just that your opponent can use the X-Wing on later turns to be able to do stuff to you, just like you could do to them, but their strategy doesn't require them to nuke their own units to be able to be effective with those X-Wings while you do. So it's a downside, I think, across the board, no matter which way you choose to use this. It could generate something that allows you to flood the board with a couple of the extra units each turn, 1 unit per turn, and then 2 units on the flip turn. But even at a 3/8 on 6, he's just a tough leader to do stuff with. And realistically, you can kind of just ignore that 3 power if it's coming at you, because what's 3 power going to do, right? Sure, a surprise strike will make it a 6 power, but again, you're using that on this and not on something that's actually relevant, like a Wrecker or a Poe, or even in just Cunning itself, yellow, on a Plo, on a Han, on a Fennec, you know, therefore thereafter, right? Ackbar, he's fun, it's great art. Axel Hut here presenting more cool leader options, but realistically, not going to be a viable leader in competitive Premier. Next up, we have 2 previews by way of Puente 3 over on YouTube. Link in the description below to that preview there. Go check it out if you have the opportunity. We have a unit and a event, both that mesh with what Ackbar does, but might be better or more viable outside of Ackbar's tool set. We're going to start with this unit, which is one of the cooler ships in Star Wars. We have the Blade Squadron B-Wing. This is 3-cost Cunning Heroism Space Unit, 3 power, 3 health, Rebel Vehicle Fighter. When played, if another player controls 3 or more exhausted units, give a shield token to a unit. This is a common, number 199, I believe, out of 262 in JTL. 3-cost 3/3 ship is not necessarily the best to write home. A lot of the 3-cost ships that you want to see are going to be 3/4s. Or even 4 whatevers to be able to get some of that stuff out there. But a 3/3 is not terrible for 3 in space. And if you're playing it late game, or if your opponent has gone wide and has already attacked you a bunch, you can either give this unit a shield token, because it is when played and already is in play when that ability goes off, or one of your more important units that you need to be able to protect with that Blade Squadron B-Wing. It's interesting that they've decided to associate B-Wings with shields rather than with the attacks, heavy attacks. If you are familiar with Skeleton Crew, especially with that specific last episode, you might recognize what a little people are kind of expecting more from B-Wings than shields. But hopefully there's another B-Wing that does represent what the B-Wing is capable of in the future. But it's a yellow rebel ship that yellow rebels want to see. If you are going to be building cunning decks that do feature rebels and are backed up by things like Wing Leader and Fleet Lieutenant, you need more rebels. This is another rebel. And you know, that's pretty much okay. The second card is art we've already seen. It's an event. It's a name we've already seen. Let's just get right into what it does. We have It's a Trap, a 3-cost Cunning Heroism Gambit event. If an opponent controls more space units than you, ready each space unit you control. This is a rare number 209 out of 262 in JTL. It's got that fantastic Admiral Ackbar art that we've seen with the Battle of Endor going on in the background. This is one of those things where potentially Admiral Ackbar's leader ability can provide you with an opportunity to be able to attack with a bunch of space units that you've already attacked with in any given turn for a total of potentially 4 cost. 1 for Ackbar's ability that exhausts one of your opponent's units if it's not already exhausted, and then also generates an exhausted X-Wing token, and then 3.3 resources into It's a Trap to be able to ready your whole fleet of ships. And if you can do this when your opponent has already done all their stuff and they're ready to pass, there's nothing they can do to counter you. This is technically, under certain circumstances, a way better final showdown, because that was a 6. It does redo your whole board, but you lose at the end, whereas It's a Trap has that requirement of your opponent controlling more space units, not necessarily exhausted units, so the exhausted stuff earlier was not necessary, but it means that it does provide 2 things that your opponent can't use to immediately kill you. And It's a Trap allows you to ready all of your space units to be able to attack again in that turn, or at least be able to ready things that have been exhausted previously due to your opponent's abilities. It is an interesting card. Again, it is not a card that I think is going to be a huge contender for playable in competitive Premier, but as a tech piece, I can see space for It's a Trap being in cunning decks that want to force your opponent to have more units than you, so you can get some more attacks on bigger units that you have. And we do have a bigger unit coming later on that does support this a little bit, especially with what it can do on the turn that it's played. As it stands, funky art, and that's pretty cool. Next up, we have a rework of a unit that already exists in the game at the same rarity, but aspect shifts and costs a little less. We have Devastator, Hunting the Rebellion. This is an 8-cost aggression villainy space unit, 9 power, 6 health, Imperial vehicle capital ship. You assign all indirect damage you deal to opponents. That's fantastic. When played, deal 4 indirect damage to each opponent. This is a legendary number 143 out of 262 in JTL, and this is one of those cards that is actually designed a little bit with Twin Suns in mind. So for Twin Suns, this is a fantastic card. It's only a one-off, but you can immediately deal 4 damage to all of your opponents, and you get to choose where it goes. So you can clear out problematic units on the board, spread a bunch of damage to be able to do more damage with things that won't care about your opponent's units being damaged, or just go 40 you, 40 you, 40 you, because you control where the indirect damage goes. In terms of Premier, this is actually still a great ship. Indirect damage wants to be controlled. If you can drop Devastator and then continue dropping more instances of indirect damage, you can clear your opponent's board or just deal damage to your opponent's base and try to win the game from that aspect. But it's also a 9 power ship on 8. Sure, it's easier to defeat than the original Devastator was. That was a 10-10. This is a 9-6, but it also comes out 2 turns earlier and gives you a huge boost in a strategy you want to be running that we've seen so far in aggression, which is indirect damage. Fantastic ship. My one complaint, I wish it wasn't legendary. Wish it was a rare. Having the same type of unit in the same high value rarity means that it's going to be very difficult for certain people to be able to pick these things up. Now, Devastator's not that expensive. I don't think this is going to be that expensive, but it's still a rare thing to be able to pick up and get those legendaries out of packs, unless you're buying cases like some of us are. Me, not necessarily the set, but I have before, which is why I have access to a bunch of legendaries. That being said, love this ship, love the design, love everything about it. Big butt Star Destroyers, they're here. They blasting. Next up, we have 2 previews from Rebel Resource, link in the description below to that YouTube video. Each of these have a major portion of the mechanics of this set, piloting and indirect damage, baked into them. They're both actually quite good cards. So let's get started with the pilot. We have here Independent Smuggler, 1 cost, Cunning Ground Unit, 1 power, 1 health, raid 1. That's actually pretty decent for a 1-drop. But for 1 and a Cunning, or 1 with Cunning, as piloting, you can attach a +1/+1 upgrade, Underworld pilot upgrade, to one of your vehicles, which the attached unit also gets raid 1. So that's a 2 power swing for 1 resource on attack. This is a common number 211 out of 262 in JTL. If you utilize this with Wedge, it's technically free. Otherwise, these are the types of things that we want to be seeing with pilots, because paying 1 cost to remove this, that's just parity between both sides, right? You paid 1 to deploy it, your opponent paid 1 to get rid of it. If you use something like Bamboozle to send it back to hand, they paid 2 or a card from hand to be able to get rid of this. You still get to get it back because that went back to your hand, and they paid 2 to do something for that cost you 1 to do. The design of this is actually pretty great. There's another pilot we're going to see that's also absolutely intensely incredible, at least in my opinion. And the fact that this is an Underworld card, it means that it does get use with Underworld decks like Cad Bane. So you could see Underworld shift into a little bit of a space strategy with Cad Bane Tarkentown, depending on how many good Underworld ships we get to replace things like Mercenary Gunship, and then adding pilots to be able to put those in there to get that ping off more often. You could potentially do it every round with cards like these. I like Independent Smuggler. I think this is a great option for piloting and doesn't really feed into the fact that piloting could be really bad, because you're only paying 1, you're getting a decent benefit as a result of it, and it is pretty good unless it just straight up dies with the unit. So, but at that same time, what'd you pay for it, right? The other preview deals with indirect damage and is an event. We have Planetary Bombardment, a 6-cost aggression tactic event. Deal 8 indirect damage to a player. If you control a capital ship unit, deal 12 indirect damage instead. This is a legendary number 181 out of 262 in JTL. This does feature the Fulminatrix from The Last Jedi. I am thinking this is going to be one of the ships we see that is landscape. It was talked about in the article, where there's 2 units that are landscape units to represent how big they are as units as a whole. At least if I remember or read that correctly. I think the Fulminatrix is one. I think that, or the Supremacy, and the Executor is going to be the other one. Supremacy could be very interesting depending on what we get. Speaking of Planetary Bombardment itself, 6 cost to deal 8 indirect damage that the opponent controls on where it goes doesn't seem incredible. But if you have the Hunting Aggressor, which gives you +1 damage, you're dealing 9. If you have the Devastator on the board, you're being able to say, okay, cool, I'm now telling you where this goes. And with the Devastator on the board, you're actually dealing 12 instead of 8. I think indirect damage is going to be costed very interestingly, because it does need to cost less or provide more because your opponent is choosing where it goes, but because they have to assign all the damage to things that can take the damage. Indirect damage can't just be all spent on 1 unit that's going to die. If it's got 2 health left and you spend all 4 on it, that doesn't work. You can only assign damage up to a unit's health total before it rolls over to the next thing. So if your opponent's got 1 unit on the board and you deal 2 of your 8, you're going 6 directly into your opponent's base, and that's going to be pretty good. That's going to help you deal with a lot of different things, and your opponent's going to have to choose, do I just take the damage to the face, or do I put some damage on my units to be able to spare me from getting killed? And then you go, cool, here's my second Planetary Bombardment. Indirect damage is going to be very fun, very interesting. Whether it's competitively viable, I'm not sure, but I think this is the mechanic that will have the most opportunity to be competitively viable. And then on top of that, in other formats, it will do what it needs to do to be able to win you the game. Speaking of capital ships, our second leader for this preview week coverage is the granddaddy capital ship master of them all. It's a very well-liked character. One of the original Star Wars customizable card game cards that I picked up in foil from a Revelation set or a Reflection set, whatever they're called, that I really enjoyed. Never got to play him there, but I might be able to play him here. We have Admiral Piett commanding the Armada. He is a Command Villainy Imperial official leader. As an action, you could exhaust him to play a capital ship from your hand. It costs 1 less. Not a huge discount, but a discount nonetheless. On 5, he flips into a 2/7, so parity with Krennic and Tarkin. He is a rare, number 5 out of 262 in JTL. And then on the flip side, he just has a passive effect that says each capital ship unit you play costs 2 less. So again, not a significant thing, but any discount on those capital ships mean they can come out earlier. So on your front face, you can pay 1 less for something like Outlaw Corona and get a 3/5 in space. On turn 1, the allows you to do some interesting stuff. Later on in the game, you can use this to bring your Devastator out earlier. You can either one. When you deploy him, you can bring out things like Devastator 2 turns earlier, or any of your other capital ships 2 turns earlier. There's a couple of combos we'll talk about a little bit later. Admiral Piett is kind of a static leader that does something interesting for capital ships. Whether or not that's viable, it is a focus on a trait, and we might not see a whole lot of that trait in terms of viability for itself, but you want to build your deck to be able to support doing this. So you want a nice spread of capital ships across all ranges, if you can even afford that or get to it with your units, and then other things that'll support that. So this is something where I think resupply and super laser tech are going to be very important, so you can accelerate to get to those higher levels. And effectively, if you can drop an Outlaw Corona on 1, super laser tech on 2, resupply on 3 or whatever, by the time it comes time to flip this dude, you can end up getting a capital ship that costs way more than you would expect on the flip turn when you hit that 5, bring out a 7, and then later on continue to doing that as you continue to ramp and do other things. So Piett's an interesting leader. I'm not ready to call him good yet, but there's something here. Next up, we have 2 previews from the FFG deck gameplay stream. We have a capital ship and a pilot. We're going to start with this capital ship. Link in the description below to the stream itself. Check it out when you get an opportunity. But right now, we have Fleet Interdictor. This is a 7-cost Vigilance Villainy space unit, 6 power, 6 health, Imperial, Vehicle, and Capital ship traits. It is a Sentinel, which is great for space. When defeated, you may defeat a space unit that costs 3 or less. Knock out those Y-Wings, knock out those X-Wings, knock out those B-Wings. This is a common number 40 out of 262 in JTL. The Fleet Interdictor, designed as a ship to make it so that opposing forces couldn't hyperspace out of the system, because it is able to generate a gravimetric field around itself, preventing hyperspace ships from being able to go there without potentially ripping their ships apart. And you don't want to do that, because that sucks. So having it be a 6/6 in space as a Sentinel is pretty good. 7 is costly, but maybe with that Piett, you can bring it out a little bit earlier. If you have the resources available on your flip turn, this also comes out. And then if this does end up getting defeated, you can at least defeat back one of the things that potentially did that. You could knock out a Millennium Falcon with this, one of the earlier Falcons, and the new Falcon, in fact, as well. Incredible ship. I think this is a great piece of art. I think this is a very interesting design. Little expensive for my tastes, but I've called that for a couple of other things that ended up being really good in the meta, so who knows? I think this is pretty much draft chaff, even if it is cool. But maybe somebody will stick it in a deck that will end up being absolutely incredible, and I hope they do so, because this is a great ship design to have in Star Wars Unlimited. And for our second preview from this stream, we have a pilot, popular character, has the 2nd season of a series coming out very soon. We have Cassian Andor, Threading the Eye. 3-cost Vigilance Heroism ground units, 3 power, 4 health, that's it. But for 2 resources, Vigilance and a Heroism, you can pilot him into a vehicle that does not already have a pilot. Attached unit gains on attack, discard a card from the defending player's deck. If that card costs 3 or less, draw a card. This gives you +1 power, +3 health, is a rebel and a pilot. It's also a rare, number 48 out of 262 in JTL. You're pretty much only ever going to throw this as a pilot down, because a 3-cost 3/4 wall decent stats with no ability means that he's not going to be doing much for you unless you need that ground unit rebel or that ground unit pilot to be able to do something else. And realistically, on 3, you should have a ton of other options of things to be able to do than deploying this Cassian. But for 2, 1 with Wedge, you can put this onto one of your vehicles, whether it's a space unit or a ground unit, because vehicles can go in both theaters. Start discarding cards off the top of your opponent's deck, and hopefully drawing more cards if you're discarding cards that cost 3 or less. This is a great card, great pilot. Again, a 2-cost pilot, that's probably the highest level of pilot that's going to be okay before you start turning into spending a ton of resources on something that's going to be instantly defeated. I know that Chewie is a 3-cost pilot. The special circumstance with him is that he makes it so the ship can't be defeated, or the vehicle can't be defeated, or done by normal means, but he himself can still be confiscated, which sucks, but such is life, right? They printed that in set 1, nobody cared about it, and now everybody's going insane about it because, well, confiscate's been good the entire time. But Cassian himself, +1, +3 on a ship. Throw this on a Concord Dawn Interceptors, and that thing is never leaving the board unless your opponent just goes, you know what? I'm just gonna vanquish this thing. So, very interesting design here. I like it a lot. Drawing cards is always good. Cassian hopefully helps you draw more cards. Next up, we've got two previews from TowerNumberNine, link in the description below. These are both space units that I love the actual ships for. Let's see if they end up being decent units in Star Wars Unlimited. First up, we have Quasar TIE Carrier, a 6-cost villainy space unit, 5 power, 7 health, Imperial Vehicle Capital Ship. On attack, create a TIE Fighter token. This is a common, number 243 out of 262 in JTL. Quasar TIE Carrier, it's a really cool ship design. The Rebels stole one of these in Star Wars Rebels and named it Phoenix Nest, where they used their Phoenix Squadron A-Wings and held them there as their base after Phoenix Home was destroyed. Cool looking ship. 6 cost, 5/7, not great. On attack, creating a TIE Fighter token can be pretty good, but you need to be able to get those attacks out. This is draft chaff. It's the main definition of draft chaff. It's something that's pretty much only good in one format, limited. However, being able to throw these attack tokens out on attack, and the fact that it's 7 health, and in a multiplayer format, your opponents are probably worrying about things that are a little bit more difficult to deal with. This could sneak by and give you a couple of extra TIE Fighter tokens in any given round. However, because Twin Suns does actually have more players per round, you may or may not get those extra attacks out. So, draft chaff for sure. Great art, great ship, love it. The second ship is a ship type that I love a lot, and actually this one might be moderately more useful than the last one we saw. We have Resupply Carrier. This is a 6-cost command space unit, 4 power, 5 health, Imperial Vehicle Capital Ship. That type line is pretty common. When played, you may put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. This is a common, number 119 out of 262 in JTL. Resupply Carrier is a Gazanti frigate. Love these things. They carry TIE Fighters, first seen in Star Wars Rebels. You can carry 4 TIE Fighters or 2 AT-ATs or a combination thereof of a couple of different vehicles into combat. They send these things out, they patrol, they F off, or they drop troops on the ground. Really cool ships. In terms of this game, however, 6 cost, 4/5, absolutely terrible. However, Admiral Piett makes this a 5 cost or a 4 cost on your flip turn, and this gives you another resource that comes off the top of your deck that you're able to do some interesting stuff with. So a 4/5 for 5, still not great, but it's getting you another resource. But a 4/5 for 4, that's a lot better and continues to give you that extra resource when played. So there's some interesting things you can do with the Resupply Carrier itself. I think this is going to be a card that sees some interesting play in decks like Emperor Palpatine, definitely in Admiral Piett, and maybe a couple of other green type decks that want to have these capital ships out. There's another card I'm looking for that's coming out that's going to care about capital ships outside of planetary bombardment, although Resupply Carrier into a planetary bombardment on the next round could be a pretty interesting point of being able to get you that extra damage off there if you're running command aggression green-red. Love the ship, love the art. I actually like what this card does. I think it is going to be more than draft chaff, but it will at least be good for you in limited. Next up, we have another big ship that we've seen before, aspect shifted, but still legendary. And this ties a little bit into what Admiral Ackbar's strategy is. We have Home 1 on my mark. This is a 9-cost Cunning Heroism space unit, 7 power, 8 health, Rebel Vehicle Capital Ship. If an opponent controls 3 or more space units, this unit costs 3 less to play, and it has Ambush. This is a legendary, number 204 out of 262 in JTL. Home 1 returns. Instead of having Restore and keeping yourself alive and bringing something back from your discard pile, this one wants to come out a little bit cheaper, and it wants to just smash into one of your opponent's units. 7 power is pretty big. 7 power potentially on 6 if your opponent is flooding the board with space units, or you've been exhausting your opponent's units with Ackbar and giving them X-Wings. Can help clear out a big unit off the board, and because he does have 8 health, that can also keep the Home 1 alive. I say he like it's a being, but, you know, keeps the ship alive. Great art here, interesting design. 6 cost, 7/8 with Ambush is not terrible, but the conditional is going to make it so that you're probably going to play it for 9 more often than not, because your opponent's going to know something like this is coming. Going wide on board tends to be a viable strategy for the early game, so you're 2, 3, 4, 5, and not necessarily as much on 6, because your opponent will either have cleared out, or you will have cleared out your opponent's units. Or if you're letting things be alive, you either have a bunch of Sentinels on the board, or you're taking a ton of damage. And I think at a certain point, this Home 1 is not going to save you. The idea probably is to get this out on 6 as best as possible, with the ambush and then just start pummeling your opponent's base thereafter and hope that your home one can survive. Or you can throw a shield on it, or you can throw a little bit of healing on it, whatever the case may be. It's an interesting design, but I don't think it's going to be as viable in the game as the new Devastator is going to be. But home one is here. You've got one big capital ship. Here's another big capital ship. Let's hope we can see an Executor down the line. Next up, we have 2 previews from Wossy Plays over on YouTube. Link in the description below to that video. Go check it out if you have the time. We have 2 space units. One is a villainy space unit and one is a heroism space unit. So let's check out this villainy unit. We have Banshee, Crippling Command, a 5-cost vigilance villainy space unit, 4 power, 5 health, separatist vehicle and fighter. I didn't actually expect to see too many separatists, but this is pretty good. Plus we have another one coming later. On attack, you may deal damage to a unit equal to the amount of damage on this unit. It's an uncommon, number 37 out of 262 in JTL. This fits the grit strategy, giving your stuff grit, so that way you want the damage on it, so when this attacks, you get to deal damage to another unit. It is just another flat unit. It doesn't matter whether it's space or ground, so that's pretty good. You can use the Banshee to clear out some of your opponent's ground units while having damage on your space unit here. Playing Banshee on 5 and then flipping Ventress into this on 6 is actually going to be pretty good, because at its base with the Ventress pilot, you're looking at a 7-9, but with grit, any of that extra damage that's on your unit is going to go into your power, and then that damage that's on your unit will also go into your on attack ability. So Banshee can really take out 2 units a turn if necessary, or deal a ton of damage to your opponent's base while taking out 1 unit each turn with the amount of damage you can build onto it. Throw something like Resolve Resilient on it so you can get 3 additional health. Anything that you want to throw on here as an upgrade to it to give it more power. Experience tokens really help out the Banshee in what it is capable of doing, because it gives you more health and more power. Lots of cool things. I think this is a neat ship and is actually potentially going to be a very good 1-2 punch of a unit on 5 and your leader flip on 6 with Ventress, but who knows what other strategies will come out with utilizing this specific unit. I like it a lot. Whether it's viable in the overall meta, I think it has a chance to be, especially considering the fact you don't need anything else to make its ability do well. Put a couple damage on it, slam it into another vehicle. On your next turn, if it survives, boom, you can do it again. So, decent unit, in my opinion. This second preview from Wossy Plays might be my favorite unit of the set so far. We'll have to see. Blue Leader did a really good job, but we have a different leader, and that leader is Red Leader, Form Up. This is a 4-cost command heroism space unit, 3 power, 4 health, rebel, vehicle, fighter. This unit costs 1 less to play for each friendly pilot unit and upgrade. When a pilot upgrade attaches to this unit, create an X-Wing token. This is an uncommon, number 101 out of 262 in JTL. So, right off the bat, this is Wedge's X-Wing from the Battle of Endor. That's when he was Red Leader. Very cool representation for the character. Throwing Wedge onto this is going to be a great idea, because not only does it give you that extra power, it also does give you that X-Wing token that you can use on later turns. There is a very interesting strategy for this specific ship that allows you to play a pilot on round 1 when you have 2 resources, and then immediately get Red Leader out for 3. A 3-cost 3/4 in space with no downside, no picking up, none of that, any of that other stuff is going to be very good for rebel deck strategies. There's a lot of very interesting stuff coming out of this set that I think is really going to help characters like Sabine, characters like Leia in terms of their leader. And with one of the cards we're going to see later, I think even Wedge has a chance of being a very good aggro deck utilizing these space units and pilots. But right off the bat, you could potentially, if you have 4 pilot units or upgrades on the board, play this for free and then attach a leader into it to get another X-Wing to be able to prepare for a bombardment on your opponent's turn. This unit is incredible. It is, again, only an uncommon, just like Blue Leader was. Some of these units that are coming out at the uncommon step are absolutely incredible. And while, again, still a little hesitant at Pilot, when Pilot is able to generate extra value for you for less resources utilizing Wedge, utilizing small cost pilots like we saw with the Independent Smuggler, we're going to see another small cost pilot here in a little bit that's also absolutely incredible. Or those pilots making other things cheaper, that's when upgrade removal is going to matter less, because the efficiency isn't there. We've talked about it before. I'm sure I'll talk about it again. I'm hesitant, but cards like this make me really excited for that mechanic in this set. So Red Leader, Form Up on me, into the Death Star innards. Let's blow up a Death Star. Our final leader preview during this period comes by way of FFG socials. Link to all of the FFG stuff in the description below. I know I haven't said it. It's not relevant. You know where it's from. You know how to get to it. We have another Vigilance leader. This is a heroism one this time, and he's a man, not a system. We have Lando Calrissian buying time. He is our Vigilance, Heroism, Rebel official pilot leader. As an action for one resource and exhausting the leader, you can play a unit from your hand, paying its cost as always. If you do and you control a ground unit and a space unit, give a shield token to a unit. As an epic action on 7, you can flip into a 5/7 leader or a +5/+5 pilot. He is a rare, number 3 out of 262 in JTL. On his unit side, he is a 5/7 with Sentinel. On his upgrade side, he is a +5/+5. Attached unit is a leader unit. Attached unit is a Sentinel. And when this is deployed as an upgrade, you may give a shield token to a unit in a different arena. So a couple of different things about this Lando. This is the Vigilance style of trying to help other things. So for Lando's front side, you're trying to get some parity between the two different types of units. If you already have a space unit and a ground unit in play, you just use his ability, play a unit, and then give a shield. So you're paying 1 for the shield, and then your regular cost for the regular unit. So you're going to be trying to do this with cheaper units, and you get that shield to the unit to be able to do the different things that are necessary. You only want to use this when you get the shield. So if you don't have both, but you do have one, say a ground unit, you can use Lando's ability to play a space unit, and then give either of them the token that you want to do. On the flip side, you want to make sure, I would say pretty much always deploy this as the upgrade and never the ground leader unless you desperately need a 5/7 Sentinel for 7. We know 7 cost leaders are pretty difficult to play. Hunter has not seen any play. Vader does see some play, but not really enough play to justify what he costs in terms of his flip, although a 5/8 with the ability to deal 2 damage on attack is pretty good, and his leader side ability isn't terrible. Lando himself, I just don't think is justifiably a ground leader for 7. But being able to do that +5/+5, bringing a space Sentinel, you're going to see a lot of space units in this set, so a Sentinel in space is good. And also being able to give a shield token to a different unit in the opposite arena. If you have a ground vehicle and you need a shield in space, you deploy him to the ground vehicle, then now you have a ground Sentinel, and then you get your shield in space. If you need the shield on the ground, you deploy your upgrade onto a space unit, and then you get your shield onto the ground unit. The idea is that Lando kind of wants to help the other side. That's why buying time is his subtitle. So it's pretty cool. This is, again, representative of the Death Star 2 attack. You're going to see a lot of that in this set. It seems to be one of the big bases battles that you're going to see from this, the Battle of Endor. One of the best space battles in the history of Star Wars. I think rivaled only by Scarif, and even then the scale of Scarif was so much smaller than Endor. But Lando Calrissian is here. Expensive, chonky leader. He's a little unwieldy, but I think there's going to be some people that are going to look at this and be like, this is actually fairly interesting. And I do hope that that does well for those players. Next up, 2 previews from Kawa over on YouTube. Link in the description below. Both of these cards are villainy. One's a space unit, the other is a pilot. Let's start with this space unit. We have the Invisible Hand crawling with vultures. That's one of the lines from Revenge of the Sith. 6 cost command villainy space unit, 6 power, 6 health, separatist vehicle, and capital ship. This was the other separatist unit I was talking about. When played, and when this unit completes an attack and survives, of course by the rules, you may search the top 8 cards of your deck for a droid unit, reveal it, and draw it. If it costs 2 or less, you may play it for free and put the other cards at the bottom of your deck in a random order. This is a rare, number 89 out of 262 in JTL. So our first Invisible Hand was just villainy. It wanted to pump a bunch of droids on the board and then utilize as many of your separatist forces to be able to deal with big damage to your opponent's base. This Invisible Hand actually wants to take droids from the top of your deck and put them in play, or give you bigger droids to play later from your deck, from the top of your deck to your hand. And given that it's a 6 cost, 6/6 ship, that's a capital ship, you can utilize capital ship synergies. But I think this card actually really does some interesting work in Dooku. Dooku you can use to exploit 1 unit off the board to bring this out as a 4, which can bring a 2 cost or less droid to the field to the arena from the top 8 cards of your deck, or something to your hand. Or in a leader unit turn where you do get that exploit 3, you can pull 3 units off the board and get the Invisible Hand down for 2 from a 6 cost. And that can give you some extra beefiness in space that you wouldn't have had otherwise. I don't know that this replaces the Twilight of the Republic Invisible Hand. I think they work hand in hand. You can either go 2 copies of each, or 3 copies of one in your main board and 2 to 3 copies in your sideboard, and you just switch based upon what you need. But I think this might be a very interesting space unit to get a big chunk in space for Separatist decks, which have traditionally suffered in keeping good units in space that do space things. Hopefully we get a couple of droid space units that this can mesh with to get more of that fleet feeling that the Separatist had in Revenge of the Sith right at the beginning there. A stunning move, as it were. But this is an interesting card, and I think it is going to see a little bit of play in capital ship decks that do have droid units in them. The second preview, not villainy, but is a pilot, and it's interesting that this isn't villainy. We have Academy Graduate. This is a 2-cost Vigilance ground unit, 1 power, 2 health, Sentinel. Nothing really too much to write home about. But for piloting for the same cost, the attached unit gains Sentinel, gets +1 power, +2 health. It is Imperial, it is pilot, it is a common, number 58 out of 262 in JTL. Cheapo piloting upgrade for Imperials in blue. Don't know if it's going to need to see as much play, or don't know if it's going to see as much play as potentially it could, but getting a cheap pilot for Imperials in Vigilance is a good idea. Draft chaff to start, but we're very early on in the set. There could be some interesting Imperial meshing. We already know that Aggression has some interesting ships. We already know that Command is going to have some interesting ships. It'll be interesting to see what Imperial upgrades or units we get for Vigilance for blue, and this might fit right into a deck that wants that. Also, again, it's not villainy, so any deck can run this that is running blue. You got to keep those things in mind. That's another reason why I think this is primarily draft chaff, but it could see some interesting play because, again, cheap pilot, Sentinel, +1 power, +2 health. That's all you really need to know. Plus, it's got the Imperial trait. And that's pretty good. Next up, we have an article from CardMarket. Link in the description below. Check that article out when you get an opportunity. 3 heroism units, 2 ships, 1 pilot. They're all very interesting units. Let's start with one we've at least seen the name of before. We have here Gold Leader, fastest ship in the fleet. Notably, it is the Millennium Falcon, but is not named Millennium Falcon. Keep that in mind. This is a 6-cost Vigilance Heroism space unit, 5 power, 5 health, rebel, vehicle, and transport. It is shielded, so you put a shield token onto it when it comes into play. While this unit is defending, the attacker gets -1, -0. This is an uncommon, number 54 out of 262 in JTL. This combos very, very well with the Lando Leader. You play this on 6, you flip your Lando Leader onto this on 7. This becomes a 10-10. If it still has the shield, you got the shield token. Now it's a Sentinel, and you just gave a shield token to one of your ground units. The fact that it's a 6-cost 5/5 with shield means that it can at least survive a little bit, and while defending, which is why you want that Sentinel, your opponent is going to get -1 attack while attacking it, so it's a little bit more of a threat than it would have been otherwise. You can effectively see this as like a 6 health unit instead of a 5 health unit. Ultimately, however, especially with that Academy Graduate we just saw, you can throw a cheaper pilot into this that has Sentinel. The Academy Graduate would cost you 2 to put into the Gold Leader, making it a 6/7, but it also has Sentinel with the shield, and your opponent's getting -1 on the attack while attacking it. I think this is actually a very good ship. It should see some interesting amount of play, especially if Rebel becomes a really big, important strategy for Vigilance as a whole. But ultimately, what it comes down to is that this is an interesting ship with an interesting design, designed specifically to mesh with Lando. We'll have to see if other things come out that make it want to be played outside of Lando, because if it's only Lando, I don't know that it will see too much play overall. The second preview from CardMarket gives us our first instance of heroic indirect damage. We have Red Squadron Y-Wing. This is a 2-cost Aggression Heroism space unit, 1 power, 3 health, Rebel Vehicle Fighter. On attack, deal 3 indirect damage to the defending player. This is a common, number 149 out of 262 in JTL. I think Red Squadron Y-Wing is actually a very good counterpart to Green Squadron A-Wing. And the reason why is they're both 2-cost units that end up having 1 power and 3 health, but each of them will do something specific for you based upon it attacking. Green Squadron A-Wing makes the full power 3, while Red Squadron Y-Wing gives you the indirect damage that your opponent has to deal to their units or their base. If you're looking at trying to spread some damage onto the opponent's units, Red Squadron Y-Wing is a great play. If you're looking to just deal the direct damage to your opponent's base or clear out one specific unit of your choice, you're using the Green Squadron A-Wing. Great card, great art here. Love seeing, again, representation of Battle of Endor. Wedge was able to lead some of these Y-Wings into the Death Star core to be able to blow it up and do the fun stuff and kind of just keep everything busy while they wait for the shield to go down. Love this card. I think it's going to be a staple in heroism aggression decks, red heroism, whatever. I don't like calling it white or black for villainy, but this is a great card. I think it's going to see a lot of play. Unfortunately, it does mean it pushes out the Gray Squadron Y-Wing, which was my preview from set 2, but this is still just a fantastic card. Same stats, but just a little bit more of what it can do compared to just the heroism part, which is why this is 2 aspects, and that card was 1. We saved the best for last. Card Market's 3rd preview and our last card preview of this coverage period is a pilot. He's heroism. It's something that this set absolutely needed to see for heroism to really make this strategy go forward. We have Nien Nunb, loyal co-pilot. This is a 1-cost command heroism ground unit. 1 power, 2 health as a ground unit. This unit gets +1/+0 for each other friendly pilot unit and upgrade. So potentially you can go up really high if you've got a lot of upgrades and units that have pilot on them. But for 1 and the same cost for piloting, you could attach this to a vehicle that doesn't already have a pilot. The attached unit gets the same bonus, +1/+0 for each other friendly pilot unit and upgrade, but also gets Nien Nunb's +1/+2, is a rebel, and is a pilot. This is a rare number 93, my favorite number, out of 262 in JTL. This guy is legit. He's cheap. He's got a relevant effect. He's got a relevant trait. He's in a relevant aspect for what this style of gameplay wants to do. Nien Nunb is going to be a 3 of in every single command heroism deck, green heroism, that wants to use pilots because he gets you those extra bonuses. He's cheap. And if you're playing Wedge, which this guy is also an automatic 3 of in every Wedge deck, he's free, because you can use Wedge's ability to reduce this cost to 0 and you throw it onto the pilot. So the great example so far, pick any 2-cost ship that you can play in heroism. Let's say Green Squadron A-Wing. You throw a Green Squadron A-Wing, you exhaust Wedge, you throw Nien Nunb down. You're able to do a pretty big power move with Nien Nunb and the Green Squadron A-Wing on the next round, and then deploy Red Leader for 3, which then on another turn you can deploy another pilot cheaper onto that unit in order to be able to get an extra X-Wing token. It's just this layering combo move of being able to do a bunch of really cool stuff, and I'm very excited for this. This is what piloting needs to be. This is the type of situation where you get something that, if your opponent does remove it, it sucks for you, and they needed to do it, but they wasted it on a cheap one, so you can use your more expensive pilots a little bit later, such as Chewie. A combination of being able to get things like a Green Squadron A-Wing or a Red Squadron Y-Wing into play with Nien Nunb, then Red Leader or Blue Leader, then Chewie pilots, and then the Millennium Falcon with other pilots onto that, that's gonna be off the hook. The options that are going to be available to, let's just say Wedge, not even pointing out any other leader that could use a card like this. The options that are going to be available to Wedge to make a powerful deck, I think if we get more things like this, Wedge is absolutely going to be competitive. If this is the only thing we get for Wedge, I think he still has a chance to make his mark. Maybe not top tier competitive meta. I know people like to use the term tier 2 in Star Wars Unlimited. Tier 2 doesn't exist. If you're tier 2, you don't exist. But this is effectively the best example of something that could come up as a quote unquote tier 2 style deck. So this card made me super excited for the set. I loved Red Leader, I love Blue Leader, love the new Falcon, love Chewie, all that other stuff. But this guy right here, this says that maybe development is taking this seriously and we're getting good pilots. The Academy Graduate was a good pilot. The Independent Smuggler is a good pilot. If we can get a bunch of 1-cost pilots that do some good stuff, even Anakin is good. Chewie we know is great already. If we get a lot of pilots to do a lot of good things, I think piloting will be okay, but it needs to be this absolutely cracked design from the ground up to make it worthwhile to do. Right now, we're getting closer. We're lurking. Beyond the previews that we have received for this period of coverage, we also had 2 live streams from FFG, one about Gamegenic accessories and the other about just deck gameplay. We saw the previews from the deck gameplay, and we also had an article going up about sectors and regional qualifiers. So we're going to start with the Gamegenic stuff, then we're going to go over the sectors and regional qualifiers, because the deck gameplay stuff is just things that you can check out at your leisure on the YouTube channel for Fantasy Flight Games. Links to these 2 videos and the article in the description below, but Gamegenic is off the hook. Ingenious supplies for for real. Let's check out what's coming with set 4, Jump to Lightspeed. Now, there are individual images of a lot of this stuff spread around. You're more than welcome to go check out, but we're just going to give a quick rundown of all the different things that they announced as part of this batch of accessories that are coming out. So I believe the first image here we have is stuff that's kind of universal, and then the next image is things that are associated with specifically set 4. So we're going to start left to right. This big guy right here is a full neoprene Twin Suns playable mat with spots for your base, both leaders, ground and space arenas, ground on the interior, space on the exterior, and spaces for all the different tokens that go or that are associated with Twin Suns, Blast, Plan, and Initiative. Speaking of Blast and Plan tokens, there's a new Pro Accessories expansion pack that comes with the double-sided versions of the 1s and 5s, and then the Experience, Epic Action, and Shield tokens, but it also comes with Sentinel tokens and the Blast and Plan tokens, finally in the Gamegenic acrylic. So I'm definitely going to pick up one of these. Really cool stuff. You can buy the Pro Pack that we talked about last week that comes with all the double-sided stuff, and then this, and you'll have more than enough tokens to get anything done you need in Star Wars Unlimited that are associated with tokens. Next up, we have these little turn wheels here. These are designed to fit your base in and have a base counter of up to 49 life or base health. It is a 49 damage. It is a future-proof design just in case for some reason there is a 50 health base, so on and so forth. Really cool here. These do not fit in any of the deck pods, unfortunately, but they are a cool thing that you can just throw into your backpack, slide your base into it, have it on the board, and you have yourself a little ticker that does count up from 0. Next, we have these big guys here. These are absolutely incredible. These are 3 down, 4 wide pocket binders. So I think it's like 12 pocket total that are in these nice hard shell cases that fit in Swedish shelves. So Calyx basically, and or things that are of similar design. If you go to Target, you'll see those things as well. They fit three total inside each cubby hole here, which is pretty cool. You can store them vertically or horizontally. They're designed to be stored either way. They do generally say that it's better to hold them horizontally, so you're going to hold them, you know, lengthwise across because of the way that the binders are designed. So there's no drag on there. You can pull it in and out. They're really cool. They are D-ring style, which means that the ring itself doesn't move in the binder. It just sticks onto the one side and you flip the pages. This is a really, really cool product. It is a very expensive product, but it is going to be worth it as what you get out of it is really cool. I hope that it does come with the pages with this, because otherwise it's going to be super expensive outside of even just the cost of this base thing, but it is still pretty cool. Next, we have 2 different binders here. These are soft cover binders, very similar to what I use for my staple sets for Star Wars Unlimited. One of them is just the basic Star Wars Unlimited with the blue lightsaber. The other one is the Death Star Trench Run. These are really cool. 9 pocket total, 3x3. Excellent design in there. And then we have a zipper folder here from Gamegenic as well. If you're familiar with their stuff, it's made of the same material as their sidekicks and their sidewinders. Squires. Sidewinders, a different company. Sidekick and Squires. But this binder is made of the same material that the deck pods are made out of, which is absolutely incredible. Lots of really cool stuff coming out of that. Also, 9 pocket 3x3. It stores a lot of stuff. One thing they did note, I forgot to point out, this big box here holds up to 1,056 cards, which means that you can hold an entire play set of one set of Star Wars Unlimited in here and then some. So that's really, really cool when it comes to that. Next up, we have a litany of Twin Suns products, which is really cool. I'm very happy that Gamegenic is going all in on the Twin Suns format. I have not been able to play this myself because there's not enough people that choose to actually play this in the area that I'm at, but I would love to see FFG go, you know what, Premier, that's the competitive format. We're going to give you guys what you need for there, but we are going to focus on making Twin Suns the Premier format for Star Wars Unlimited because there's less sweaty tryhards when it comes to that format than there is in Premier. We have 2 new styles of soft crate. We have one here, the set 4 Scarif battle art on the soft crate, and then just a generic Star Wars Unlimited label with a thing on top, and the lightsabers, much like this binder is. They hold 100 cards, double sleeved, and there's a slot for tokens and 2 slots for clear cases for your leaders. And I believe they do come with the clear cases. If not, you'll be able to get those pretty easily. They come 12 in a box for like $12, $13 when they are available. I know those tend to be hard to get. Ask your local game store to order those for you, so that way you can be on the order list to get them up as soon as they come up. Great design here, absolutely love it, and things fit horizontally instead of vertically in the deck box itself. I also like that a lot. And then we have one new color of deck pod for Twin Suns per aspect. So you do have yellow, villainy, blue, green, red, and heroism. They are double-sided, so you can see each leader. That, much like the regular deck pod has the face of it, you can see here the other side of this also has the face of a leader that you could throw on there, so you can store both of your Twin Suns leaders in the sides, much like you can the regular deck pod as it is now. Fun fact, each of these deck pods will come with one specific token that can be used in place of whatever you're using for that specific thing. So for our style aspects, the yellow, blue, green, and red, we have new art for some of the basic 30 health bases. And then for the villainy and heroism ones, we have new art for the tokens, the shield and experience tokens. So yellow, if I remember correctly, was Jabba's Palace. Blue was, I actually don't remember what blue was. I want to say it was Dagobah's Swamp. Green is the Echo Base, and the red is the Catacombs of Kadera. Lots of really cool stuff there that's associated with each of those. And then the villainy deck pod comes with the shield, and the heroism deck pod comes with the experience token. These are the only ways you're going to be able to get this art for this experience token. But to kind of assuage what people say is that they should have been in packs, these tokens are very different, at least the way that he was holding it. That could have just been prototyping, and that they are normal cardstock sized cards that come with these things, but it actually felt like it was a much thicker design, much like the old high techs that the Score Dragon Ball Z card game used to use, or just basically thick, chunky cards that can be used, that don't go in your deck, that just stay outside of it. I think the designs of these are actually really cool, and if they do remain that thick, basically tech style card, it's going to be really cool. People who are familiar with Commander over the last couple of years have noticed that the proxy leader in the set, when they got rid of the jumbo cards and started doing the thick cards, it's that same type of concept, same type of card. So lots of really cool, just generic Star Wars Unlimited stuff, minus this one binder here, and then this Twin Suns deck crate, soft crate. I wouldn't be surprised if we got new Twin Suns soft crate designs with new art each set, much like we do with the regular soft crates. But in terms of what's coming for, this is all coming at the same time as set 4. But we have another batch of stuff coming from set 4, showcasing this binder once again, and a new XL art here for Gold Leader on this mat. It's much bigger. It's like the size of a normal desk mat. I have one right here. I wouldn't be able to show you, but that is one of the designs coming for the Jump to Lightspeed accessories. We have the Scarif Battle, we have a First Order Stormtrooper, and we have the Fett's Fire Sprays, the normal size mats that come in here. We do have the sleeves, which we talked about earlier, Boba Fett, Han, First Order Stormtrooper, and Admiral Ackbar, and then the soft crates. So nothing super new here that we haven't already seen, but except these new arts here for these mats. Lots of really cool things coming for accessories coming out of Jump to Lightspeed. Gamegenic proving themselves to be one of the best, if not the best companies under Asmodee's banner, just killing it with product quality, killing it with product designs, supporting as many games as they possibly can, because honestly, Gamegenic seems to actually get what's necessary to make a good product for the market. So you can see here, right here on the bottom, how those big, blocky, hard shell covers, binders fit inside a Swedish shelf. Really cool thing. And the fact that Adrian here was showcasing every product that they had that was new was also fantastic. Great stream. Go check it out. Lots of cool stuff here. Next up, we're going to be talking about sector and regional qualifiers. So we do have here an article talking about the sector qualifiers and the regional qualifiers. I'm not going to read the whole thing off. Link to this article in the description below, as I've already stated. We are going to go over some of the most important aspects, which are what they are, what the prizing are, and how the structure leads into the Galactic Championship, which is happening in, if I remember correctly, it's July. So we have this lovely article. Without further ado, let's take a look at sector qualifiers. So sector qualifiers are large-scale two-day events that take place only a handful of times throughout a given organized play season. It seems like like the season is being built as from Galactic Championship to Galactic Championship. So basically, as the Galactic Championship ends, or I believe it's a sector qualifier takes place during the Galactic Championship for people who didn't qualify for day 2, that will be the start of the next season, and the end of the season will be the full Galactic Championship. That's my speculation based upon the way they communicate in this article, but here we have the sector qualifier can seat over 1,000 players, and that's just for the main tournament. There will also be side events, which Josh talked about before he left the company, which should be super fun. If you're familiar with Flesh and Blood, these will be similar to the battle hardens that take place, and then there's a bunch of side events that are associated with that. The main event is the sector qualifier tournament itself, which takes place over both days of the tournament. So you have an open stage that is available to everybody that signs up for the tournament. It seems like up to 1,000 players, which should be pretty cool. And then day 2 will have your second half of that tournament. So day 1 is a Swiss tournament. You have to make a certain record in order to be able to get into day 2. It looks like it's effectively X2. So no matter how many rounds you're playing, if you lose more than 2 rounds, you're out for day 2. But if you do go X2, you get to the second day, which there's another set of Swiss rounds, which will lead into a top 8 elimination bracket, which also takes place on day 2. And then whoever wins is the champion of the whole tournament. Prizing looks to be pretty cool. There is a participation mat for everybody that participates in the event. That's going to be super expensive. I have no idea how they're handling that. But props to them for at least giving everybody something cool. The main prize of the sector qualifier is a guaranteed spot in day 2 of the upcoming Galactic Championship, which you can earn by making it to the top 8 elimination bracket. So this is different than the planetary qualifier. Planetary qualifier, only the winner makes it to day 2 of the Galactic Championship. With a sector qualifier, it's top 8. And this is also the same for the regional qualifier. The only prize that's on offer here isn't just that. You also have a top 8 mat for the sector qualifier. Look at that beautiful art of Black One over Takodana, I think was the name of the planet. We also have Kylo Ren and Obi-Wan in cool frames with alternate arts here. I believe Obi-Wan is the alternate art participation promo card, plus you get a custom tote canvas bag, participation game mat, and a sector qualifier medal initiative counter. It's a lot of prizes for just participating. You really should just jump in here to get the swag, even if you don't think you're going to make it. Just lose your first 2 rounds and then go start playing side events. And then if you make it to day 2, you'll get making it day 2 at all means you get 1 copy of the Kylo Ren promo card. And then if you make it to top 64, they'll add extra booster packs. And if you make it to top 8, you'll start earning placement variations of the Kylo Ren promo card. So everybody who makes it to day 2 gets Kylo Ren. If you make it to top 64, you get extra booster packs. And then much like PQs and showdowns, you'll get placement versions of Kylo Ren. So top 8, top 4, finalist, and champion, which is pretty cool. They also have side events that are going to be available as long as the venue doors are open and side events are running from the start of the sector qualifier right up to the end. As for what side events themselves are, you can look forward to Premier Pods, Draft and Sealed Pods, Twin Sun Pods, miniature 8-player tournaments. They're running some of these at Adepticon, which should be interesting, and a larger Premier tournament for folks who didn't make it to day 2 of the main event, and more. I wouldn't be surprised if this event that takes place, that's a larger tournament, might be a miniature PQ. Which could be very interesting. Each side event awards prize tickets for participation. So if you're familiar with convention events that are run by like SCG Con, you're going to get prize tickets. You're going to a prize wall. You pick your stuff off the prize wall. You can exchange those tickets for that and some exclusive goodies. And you can earn prize tickets from the main tournament as well. And they'll have information about what sort of promos you can find. So sector qualifiers for season 0 begin in April. There will be 4 of them that take place before the Galactic Championship. And then later seasons of the organized play will have more sectors that take place. So you can think of it as an appetizer for what's to come. So that's pretty cool. Let's talk about regional qualifiers. Regional qualifiers are basically going to work exactly the same way that sectors do, just double the amount of people that are available. So if you think of sectors as almost like a state level championship, it's going to be a little bit wider than that to start, but I think they're probably going to try to run more of those than something like the regional qualifiers. And then the regional qualifiers are even more limited, but they hold more people. And that's kind of like your calling level event if you're familiar with Flesh and Blood. Regionals being sectors being the battle hardens, regionals being the callings, and then you obviously have the Galactic Championship, which is the World Championship. I wonder if they're going to try to if they're going to rope the regional qualifiers as national level championships, or if they're going to have separate national level championships for Star Wars Unlimited. That's probably a season 1 question. Anyway, prize structure here. You got your Piett top 8 mat. Our promo prizes are Rey and Emperor Palpatine, and it looks like there's an exclusive Piett soft soft crate here, which is pretty cool. Anyone who makes it to the top 8 of the regional qualifier will receive a guaranteed slot in day 2. Simply participating in the regional will earn you an alternate art Palpatine promo card, a participation game mat, a custom tote bag, a custom lanyard, and a regional qualifier medal initiative counter. And you will get the regional qualifier soft crate deck box themed after the Executor and Admiral Piett. Ooh, themed after the Executor, which means the Executor's on the other half of this box. That's pretty cool. And also a pack of regional qualifier sleeves also themed after Admiral Piett. I hope these are high quality, made by Gamegenic, because sometimes these sleeves end up being really crappy. Not Gamegenic sleeves, but prize sleeves. If anybody's familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh or Bandai stuff, you know all of that is hot trash, and you have to get like oversleeves to protect those things. That's already a ton of prizes if you make it to day 2. Again, X and 2, so don't lose more than 2 matches and you should be fine. You can earn even more. Simply playing in day 2 earns you an alternate art Ray promo card, while placing in top 128 gets you some extra booster packs, so doubling the amount of people from the sectors into regionals getting the extra booster packs. If you make it to the top 8 elimination bracket, you'll earn placement copies of the Ray promo card and a game mat based on your final placement. Make it to semifinals, you earn yourself a special plaque commemorating your status as regional qualifier top player. Regional qualifiers will start in May, so a month after the sectors, and there will be 2 of them before the Galactic Championship. They'll provide more information on these events later. I'm actually surprised that they're stacking these in such a manner of putting so many of them before the Galactic Championship. I would say the best way to do this would actually be to spread these things out to give people the opportunity to travel to whichever one that's closest to them rather than running them all together all at once. It makes sense for PQs, which happen a bunch of times per year. Basically, showdowns are supposed to happen within the end of the first month of a set's release. PQs are supposed to happen within the end of the second month, beginning of the third month, and then you could do something larger just before the release of the next set if they wanted to, or intersplice these regional and sector qualifiers. I'm hoping they take into consideration that jam-packing regional qualifier in April, a sector qualifier in April, a regional qualifier in May, and then the Galactic Championship in July is a lot of events to try to schedule to travel to. And I hope that they consider in the future, when they have more of these, having them go throughout the year rather than just in a big chunk, and having your tournament circuit really only be relevant for about 4 months out of the year. But this is the trial run, as they specifically say in this article. This is season 0. This is also why I'm speculating that season 1 will start with the sector or regional qualifier that takes place during the Galactic Championship, for those of us who aren't actually Galactic Championship material. And yes, that does include me. So great art here, though. I really want this Ray, so I'm probably going to have to try to see if I can either bump my way into a regional qualifier. There's only 2 of them, so it's probably going to be 1 in the States and 1 abroad, which means it will be an event I have to travel for, and it is in May, so we'll have to figure out. Otherwise, I think it's a lot of cool stuff here. You get a lot of really cool swag for participating in regionals and in sectors. This mat also is quite good. Lots of cool stuff. They're putting out some interesting pricing, and I think that they've definitely learned what people really want and to focus on what they know is already good rather than speculating on what they think is going to be good from a coming set. Again, I've said it before, the Evazan thing, honestly, I believe was them thinking Evazan was going to be more popular than he ended up being. Most of us pretty much knew right off the bat that Evazan was dead in the water, and the developers seemed to think that it was a very good card when it turned out not to be. And you know, these are mistakes we learned from in season 0, and so far it seems like they definitely have already considered it. You're getting at least 1 legendary in each of these, the sector and regionals. The participation card is rare, but the the day 2 event card is a legendary, and that's gonna be pretty good. It's probably gonna sell for a pretty penny. So if you've got those, hold on to them, let their value appreciate, or just sell them off immediately to fund your next round of qualifiers. And that's tournament information. There we have it, a ton of information. We had something like 20 previews going on this week from creators, from FFG socials, from FFG live streams. We had Gamegenic products. We talked about promos coming out of tournaments. Lots of really cool things coming out of Star Wars Unlimited. I am getting a little bit more hyped based upon some of the stuff I've seen in Jump to Lightspeed. I think that these qualifiers are going to be very interesting. I currently have a kind of plan to go to the Galactic Championship, but mainly to participate in side events. I could be doing the same thing for these other events in terms of the sectors and regionals, depending on where they are. But I hope you all have plans to participate in these things. And I hope eventually FFG can kind of build like they did with the PQs, host more, do cool things, and host more of them throughout the year. That's probably my biggest complaint. As I said in the previous section of the video, I think they need to be spread out and not just in this pocket of like 3 to 4 months. But that's it. I've already talked a lot in this video. This video is much longer than I was anticipating it being, but we're here. It's time. Lots of Star Wars stuff coming out. I'm excited. March is marching ever forward to the release of Set 4, Jump to Lightspeed. Lots of spaceships coming out. PQ season is wrapping up. Lots of interesting things. I might do a video later on talking about the top decks and how the meta has matured and evolved throughout the PQ season and how it's much more healthy this time than it was in Set 2, which is excellent, and lots of cool stuff. So thank you for joining me, folks. Let me know what your favorite part of this video was. If you're going to participate in a sector or regional, what your favorite promo card is, what your favorite preview card you've seen so far. Remember to like and comment on this video. Subscribe to this fantastic Star Wars Unlimited YouTube channel for all of your Star Wars Unlimited needs. Don't know why I said fantastic, but I did because I feel it is fantastic. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. Like I said, I've talked too much. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next one, and I'll see you in light speed.